र अब कार्यक्रमलाई अगाडि बढाउँदै हाम्रो नेक्स्ट सेसन भनेको चाहिँ पर्सनल ब्रान्डिङ र त्यसको इम्पोर्टेन्सको बारेमा छ। अनुसन्धानको तथ्याङ्क अनुसार हाम्रो देशमा हाल हेर्ने हो भने व्यावसायिक क्षेत्रमा महिलाहरूको सहभागिता अझ पनि नै कम नै देखिएको छ र यसको विभिन्न कारणहरू हुन सक्छ, जसमध्ये आत्मविश्वासको कमी, प्रोत्साहनको कमी जस्ता मुख्य कारणहरू हुन सक्छ। र अहिलेको यस प्रतिस्पर्धा समयमा हामीले आफूले आफूलाई प्रस्तुत गर्दा आत्मविश्वासका साथ प्रस्तुत गर्न एकदमै नै आवश्यक रहेको छ र हामीले व्यावसायिक क्षेत्रमा कसरी चाहिँ आफूलाई प्रस्तुत गर्न सकिन्छ, आत्मविश्वासका साथ कसरी अगाडि बढ्न सक्छौँ भन्ने जानकारी दिनका लागि र केही अमूल्य टिप्पणी दिनका लागि मिस्टर समीर राणा र मिस लुनिभा साक्यज्यू आउँदै हुनुहुन्छ। र यस सेसनको दौरान हजुरहरूलाई केही प्रश्न भएमा च्याट बक्समा हजुरहरूको प्रश्न राख्न सक्नुहुनेछ र सेसनको अन्त्यमा समीरजी र लुनिभाजीले चाहिँ हजुरहरूको प्रश्नको उत्तर दिनुहुनेछ। समीर राणाज्यू हाल स्पोर्ट इनिसिएटिभ युथ फर नेपाल स्पोटिफाई नेपालका फाउन्डर र सिइओ हुन्। स्पोटिफाई नेपाल खेलकुदद्वारा शान्ति र विकास ल्याउनका लागि सुरु गरिएको एक सामाजिक उद्यम हो। साथसाथै उहाँ इफेक्टिभ अल्ट्रुइजम नेपालका को-फाउन्डर पनि हुन्। He is also currently a Master of Public Health, a Public Administration grad student at Columbia University in New York, specializing in international development and peace building. लुनिभा शाक्य ग्राफिक डिजाइन ब्याकग्राउन्ड भएकी हाल ब्रान्डिङ र भिजुअल आइडेन्टिटी एक्सपर्ट हुन्। उहाँले अहिले काठमाडौँ ट्रेनेल ग्लोबल कन्टेम्पोरेरी आर्ट फेस्टिभललाई पनि म्यानेज गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ। With this, I would like to request Mr. Samir and Ms. Luniva to take the space to talk more about personal branding and its importance.
Can everyone see the screen? Okay. Namaste, Sabjanalai. I'm Samir. Thank you so much, Krisha, for the kind introduction. Luniv and I are very excited to be here with ISEC Nepal and a host of other local, national, or international organizations for this virtual celebration of the International Day for the Girl Child. I think following up with from Bangla Ma'am and Sati's a little difficult. The Satika song is stuck in my head right now, so I guess it's really good branding. So with that, हाम्रो session today is going to focus on personal or professional branding. Ani यो session को लागि we will be talking in a mix of English and Nepali, but हाम्रो one-pager documents as well as this presentation will be shared in both languages. So don't worry about that, right? So in terms of what we're going to talk about today, I'll be focusing on alikiti branding ko content side ma, ani Luniva will be focusing on alikiti visual and design side ma. So mirror parts will cover how to frame hamro narratives through storytelling, because all branding is essentially hamro katha, our personal stories, hamro professional stories. Ani then, because it's the International Day of the Girl Child, I'll be sharing an incredible story of Mira Rai, who I think all of us know about, and talking through a three-step framework, which goes challenges, choices, or outcomes. After that, I'll alikiti operationalize this a bit to show what a potential 60-second pitch will look like in both personal or professional settings. And then after that, Luniva will cover visual identity, font and color theory, and brand confidence, and what this means for all of us as young Nepalis operating in the development or any other spaces Nepalma. So the first thing is I just say like when we think about branding when I like you hear about branding all the time, right? We think about Nike co branding, Adidas co branding, of McDonald's co branding, Starbucks co branding. So when I like that's obviously organizational context matter. Personal branding it's essentially how you answer the question, who are you? But think about personal setting ma key professional setting ma interview, conversation, whatever context ma. that question will always come out. Okay, Timi ko, like at the end of the day, who are you? Okay, why should I listen to you, or why does your story matter? So Esma is essentially all about agina banai jastै like all about हाम्रो कथा personal side ma र professional side ma. Isma, the important thing is that all of us have our stories, right? We have our values, our emotions, our choices, and our identity. So the challenge here is how to communicate that to an external audience. Again, it doesn't matter if it's your friends, your family, your workspace, your schools, how do you communicate this story to other people, right? Ani Esma, that communication in itself is एकदम important कि किनभने if we don't share our stories, then someone else will come and share those stories on our behalf. That is a big challenge with social media, for example, just like Bandana ma'am was talking about. So as my Yota method to do this is, like I said, to talk about three things: Yota challenges, Yota choices, and Yota outcomes. Ekdam simple. So, talking about some of the challenges that we face in our personal and professional lives, the choices that we've made in response to those challenges, ani the outcomes that have resulted from the choices that we've made. So this is alikiti of a theoretical background. To show an example, I'll be sharing a video of Mira Rai and her incredible rise from rural Nepali village to being one of the best athletes that Nepal has to offer at the global stage.
In 30 seconds, come on.
People didn't know how to react because it was so unexpected. If you're a girl, there seem to be no opportunities, no way out.
She's not just a sportswoman, but also an activist. This young woman is inspiring young girls all across Asia.
Hello and good morning, everybody. Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning, and I'm here in Mardi. Today is amazing day. Hi. Wow, when I be mountain, I'm so happy also.
Really tough, incredible athletes, the best runners in the world.
I wish you all very good luck.
But trail running in Nepal is quite kind of new. Very few women do these races. The first time I met Mira, she was the only female there. Nobody really gave it at the beginning. A village like Mira is the same for millions of people across Nepal.
We are at my place. Oh. यहाँ बस्नको लागि चाहिँ एकदम राम्रो छ तर यहाँ बस्नको लागि जीवन बिताउनको लागि चाहिँ एकदम गाह्रो छ यहाँ चाहिँ जन्मेदेखि मर्नेसम्म एकदम हार्डवर्क सङ्घर्ष गरेर आफ्नो अन्त्यसम्म मर्नुपर्छ त्यो जुन लेभलबाट चाहिँ माथि उठ्नको लागि चाहिँ म अलवेज कसरी हुन्छ म जन्मिँदाखेरि चाहिँ मेरो हजुरआमा एकदम धेरै दुखी हुनुहुन्थ्यो मेरो हजुरआमालाई चाहिँ म चाहिँ नाति भइदिएको भए हुन्थ्यो म केटी भएको कारणले मेरो परिवारलाई चाहिँ बोझ हुने थिए सोचाइमा चाहिँ कहिले पनि केटाभन्दा कम छुइनँ, म पनि गर्न सक्छु भनेर चाहिँ यदि हाम्रो ठुल्ठुलो सपना भए पनि गाउँ छोडेर अरू ठाउँमा जानको लागि त्यति सजिलो छैन। कोही गर्ल्सहरू चाहिँ छिटै 13 वर्षमै बिहे गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। मेरो आफन्त बहिनी चाहिँ बेचबिखनमा चाहिँ पढेर मुम्बई पुग्नु परेको थियो। त्यो देखेर मलाई चाहिँ म त्योभन्दा राम्रो गर्न चाहन्थेँ। अब त्यतिखेर चाहिँ द्वन्द्वकाल थियो। हाम्रो फ्यामिलीमा एकदम गाह्रो थियो। अनि त्यो भनौँ न खर्चहरू नपुग्नेको कारणले चाहिँ फ्यामिलीलाई पनि केही सपोर्ट गर्न सक्छु कि भनेर म चाहिँ घरबाट भागेर माउस आर्मीमा जोइन गरेँ। म आर्मीमा हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ मैले थोरै पैसा जोगाएर फ्यामिलीले सपोर्ट गर्थेँ। अनि मेरो घरको लागि म एउटा बोझ हुन चाहन्थिनँ। त्यहाँ चाहिँ केटाकेटीलाई एउटै सम्मान थियो, दिन थियो। त्यो भएको कारणले गर्ल्स बोइज लाइक आकाश धरती एउटा सेम भन्ने कुरा थियो। त्यो ट्रेनिङ क्याम्पमा चाहिँ रनिङ पनि गराएको थियो। रनिङमा चाहिँ मैले जितेको पनि थिएँ। अनि बोकेर चाहिँ मेरो म चाहिँ बोइजभन्दा स्ट्रङ थिएँ कि म चाहिँ दिनको 2 घन्टा दौडिन थालेँ। म चाहिँ कुदै गर्न सक्छु। I realized, wow, this is for me. And more race I really wants to do. Just running.
We have finalized the agreement.
त्यतिखेर चाहिँ शान्ति सम्झौता भयो। म लगायत 4,008 साथीहरू अन्डर एज भएको कारण पिपुल लिबरेसन आर्मीबाट निकालियो। त्यसपछि म काठमाडौँ आएँ। I was lost. It was very scary. बसेर चाहिँ मैले रनिङलाई कन्टिन्यू थिएँ। मसँग पैसै थिएन। मैले चाहिँ मलेसियामा फ्याक्ट्रीमा काम गर्नको लागि भिजा पनि पाइसकेको थिएँ। म जानु केही हप्ता अगाडि काठमाडौँमा हुन लागेको रेसको बारेमा सुने। मलाई चाहिँ त्यतिखेरै थाहै थिएन मेरो जीवन भनौँ न ले मोड लिन्छ भनेर।
This is a crazy tough race. The climb is enormous. It's not an easy coasting ride. As a race organizer, I've seen lots of athletes. If you asked somebody, they wouldn't say that this is somebody out to start an ultra marathon trail race.
I did not know what is trail running when I was starting this race.
She was completely unprepared, wearing cheap shoes, tracksuit pants. Her face is really innocent. It just looks like clueless.
I have to do something this race. How possible thinking, you know? I run up and down. In the last 10K, I was feeling not okay. मैले चाहिँ दौडिँदाखेरि चाहिँ मैले जीवनभरि यसरी नै then I ran. I finished first place. It was amazing. You know, I got confidence things to do this sport. And that's what
So Esma, combining Mir Raiko's story with the Red Bull co-production, always bumps me up a lot. Okay, so you video that I always feel like going running, but I last like 20 minutes, not 20 hours. So Esma, to just break it down, alikiti into the three-step framework. The challenges were ekdam clear, right? Being born in Bhojpur, but being born as a girl, okay, first Esma. Nepal Oski, US Oski, like wherever you're born, if you're born as a girl, you're already at a disadvantage based on other people's perceptions and based on all the ekdam patriarchal, sexist, misogynistic societies that we live in. So she spoke about child marriage. She spoke about how her own grandmother they wanted her grandson. So a lot of challenges, right? And a lot of them linked to just simply being born a girl. The choices she made in response, Bunny, were equally as relevant, right? She joined the Mouse at the age of 14, and because of that, she actually said how she found more equality within the Mouse camps than in her village. Esma, I have worked a lot with Nepali women conflict victims of gender-based sexual violence, former child soldiers, even women and sisters and wives of the disappeared. So Esma, it always comes down to that fact that Amro villages, it was always so unequal for girls and women that we felt no other choice than to join the Maos. So after she got discharged in 2006, because she was underage, she then joined her first ultra marathon in 2014 that we just saw the video kay Enma. And what is the end result? The end result is that a few years later, she's one of the best internationally renowned trail and sky runners. If you go to her Wikipedia page, all of her races, she's ended first or second place. So, being coming from where she's come from, going through what she's gone through, she really has made it to the top. So Esma, like when I talk about that Alikiti, that's about Hamro's stories, right? In Alikiti holistic sense, about your story, the 15-minute video also won't do justice. Mira Raiko Yota 45-minute documentary, so I would recommend people to check that out. In order to operationalize this Alikiti, the question, I go back to the initial question. Okay? When someone asks you, who are you? Personal or professional setting, man, nobody's going to sit through a 7 or 8 minute answer, right? 60 seconds, 60 seconds max, man. You need to make an ekdam strong verbal, written impression. And also keeping in mind that you is ekdam important in any context. Say again, examples of whether you're meeting a friends, whether you're meeting a stranger for the first time, interview just different conversations it's about strengthening your initial impact, your interpersonal situations. So just as an example, your 60-second pitch Kulagi, there's no right or wrong. Okay, this depends on who you are, who you want to present yourself as, and who you want to be, and how you're going to get there, right? So Esma, there are a few things that I think should be included in a pitch, but you have to take this and contextualize it to your own life. So the first thing is that you need an identifier. Namaste, mera naam Samir. I'm the founder and CEO of Sportify Nepal, for example. Professional background. Alikiti, your professional context, you have to talk a little bit about your professional background, right? So mera context, I would say, for example, I've worked with organizations like the UN, like the International Organization for Migration and Iraq, Nepal Leadership Academy, BRAC USA, Kathmandu Sri Lankan Embassy. So just, mentioning a few examples. The third thing is you talk about principal skills. So mera context, I would talk about leadership, about management, research, communications, operations, but again, this depends on your background. Next comes your academic background. So school information, like high school, college, on a master's degree, PhD degree. So that's where you kind of stated here. And then the last part, which is also important, is personal background. It's simply to make yourself a little human. Okay, like if you only talk about yourself professionally, then people would think, wow, like this person is ekdam serious and like only cares about work. But all of us have our personal interests or hobbies. So Mayor Saidma, I would say, on the personal side, I'm interested in freestyle football, in reading, in podcasting, in blogging, and also in hanging out with my puppy, right? So do small things like that also make us a little bit more human and more personable. The last point is my 60-second pitch is that our content side money. I've been focusing a lot on content. Our content side what we say matters. how we say it is equally, if not more important. Okay, so if you notice during the presentation, I'm trying to follow 3 or 4 C's of communications. So the C's of communications are being concise, being clear, being courteous, and being confident. And Esma, this comes through a lot of practice. This comes through a lot of practice. There are also small things, right? Like speaking alikiti slower than you're used to. That's much better to speak slower. I need to enunciate your words and to, for example, look at the camera instead of looking left, right, mati tala, and speaking so fast that you trip over your words, right? So Esma, just keep in mind that your content ko side mein ekdam important, right? Without the content, that you have nothing. The delivery mapping is super, super important. So it's about practicing both the content and the delivery and doing that at the same time within 60 seconds. And to get this right needs a lot of practice and a lot of hard work. So this month that was alikti verbal side ma, but now we are moving a little bit to the written side. So written side ma, like especially COVID ko pilama, all of us have to have our digital identity, right? With most of you that I'll probably never meet you in person. So Esma, how do we communicate our stories on our LinkedIn profiles or our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things, and also our personal websites. So Esma, you can see I put LinkedIn website, Ani Twitter, and basically they're saying the same thing. Alikiti tweaked here and there. The pictures are changed. Alikiti, the titles are changed a little bit. But essentially, the idea is that you should be able to go to any of these platforms and be able to get a sense of who I am as a person and as a professional. And your platforms, but I'll be sharing the links later on, so we can definitely continue the conversation there. Ani, last thing on my side before handing over to Luniva is that our personal and professional branding is important, but Teo also extends to organizational branding, right? With Bangla Ma'am, we saw very clearly that, her personal and professional brand is ekdam strong. And she has, 3+ decades of experience in the sector. So obviously it's going to be ekdam set. But you can see how some of the values, some of the emotions, some of the experiences, stories that she has, personal side ma also go into Satiko branding and all of that, right? And ESMA organizational branding is at least separate, but for now, I'll just show you an example of Spotify Nepalco introductory video that we launched last week. And ESMA tried to see what are the things that go into branding ESMA. It's about logo, color, font, about images, text, wording, all of that stuff that Luniva will actually cover in more detail. But for the last part in my section, I'll just be sharing this quick 1.5-minute video about Spotify Nepal. Games and sports are one of the few things that transcend age, gender, race, caste, cultural, ideological, and other boundaries that we humans have socially constructed. We at Sport Initiative for Youth, Sportify Nepal, envision a prosperous Nepal through innovative youth-led development and peace initiatives. We are a social enterprise that aims to utilize the vehicle of sports to support underprivileged and marginalized communities through local development and peace-building programmatic interventions. Under the larger umbrella of Sport for Development and Peace, our priorities will revolve around personal development, education, health, youth leadership, conflict resolution, social cohesion, and peace building. We'll work digitally and on the ground, bridging the urban-rural divide. In Nepal, we are the first social enterprise primarily focusing on sport for development and peace. Follow our journey, join our team, Khelkut for Good. So your example now, you can see how linked my personal and professional brand is to Sportify's. And with that, I'll hand over to Luniva for her presentation on visual identity.
Thank you, Samir. Namaste, everybody. My name is Zuniva Shakya. I have been a visual identity and a branding consultant for the past 7.5 years. So today I'll be talking to you about visual identity. So visual identity, भनेको के हो? Essentially, it is how people identify your brand. Among all your competitors, how can you stand out from them? So visual elements like your logo, your brand colors, typography, and branding, these are some ways that can help you stand out. But what's most important is these days, your online presence is what makes you unique. So the posts, the photos that you post online, you must always make sure that your audience is watching you. So try to be professional. Selfie-haru राखे ठिक छ that it's nicer to have somebody take a photo and put that up instead. Additionally, textहरुमा चाहिँ always check your facts and your spelling and your grammar. त्यो चाहिँ एकदमै important छ, especially now that it's so easy to post something online immediately. And online content needs to be very consistent, needs to be everything that your brand stands for. अनि real life मा अहिले त अलि गाह्रो छ कोभिड ले गर्दा, तर when you meet somebody, you need to make sure that you're presentable. How you look is very, very important. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to wear suit and boot like this to पर्दैन. As long as you're presentable, you can wear your uniform, you can wear your brand really proudly. That's what matters. Additionally, business cards, they might be a thing of the past now because of this virus. It's essential that you have your information out there, especially in things like your email signature, so that whoever you're talking to is able to recognize you and contact you afterwards. Finally, you need to make sure that your presence makes a very big impact. Were you attentive? Were you polite? Were you confident? Were you friendly? Because at the end of the day, people might forget what you look like, but they won't forget how you made them feel. So that's it for this slide. Can I have the next slide for me? So how do you start the branding process? The first thing is to know your audience. Tabarku audience go. If you can do some research on that and figure out next what platform to use. Another way to understand what platform is ideal is to understand what comes naturally to you. So for example, if you like to write, then Facebook, blog posts, LinkedIn, these are very good for those who love to write. For those who like to speak, then there are podcasts. Similarly, for photos and visual images, you can use Instagram and Facebook, and for videos, YouTube and so. And always ensure that there is consistency. So no matter what platform you use, whether that's Facebook or YouTube or anything like that, make sure that your branding is consistent in all those platforms. One way to ensure this is by establishing a tone. So for example, if you are formal to the people that you speak to, make sure that that is consistent throughout your branding. If you are a little more chatty or a little more humorous, then keep that consistent as well. And of course, there are topics, this is dependent on the topic that you're writing about or speaking about, but it's important to maintain some sort of consistency. Additionally, fonts and colors are also very important. These visual aspects really help people recognize you and identify you among everybody else. And last bit about consistency is hashtags. These days, there's so many people using hashtags and emojis, and it's a great way for people to find you and your content. So if you have a particular hashtag that you use throughout, then that's a great way for people to keep tabs on you and your business or your brand. And lastly, always stay true to your brand. So if you're talking about the environment, say, and then the next minute, you're endorsing a car that's running on petrol, it's very conflicting. So, oh my gosh, my teeth are yellow. Sorry about that. So just make sure that you are staying consistent, and like Samir said, you're looking at your mission, your vision, and your story. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to color and fonts and how they can play a huge factor in your visual identity. So bottom left ma chai maile 3 examples राखेको छु. There is a serif font, which is like your typical Times New Roman. Ani sans serif, which means it doesn't have the edge ma darka jasto, such as Calibri. And then there is the script, which is the fancy handwriting Kalku font, which is really nice to look at. But writing Kubela, I would not suggest you use that, especially when talking to clients or professionals. So I would recommend using max 2 fonts and keeping that consistent throughout your branding. Make sure that these fonts that you choose are always legible. They need to be understood and read by everybody. So number 1 thing is your brand Gunam. It has to be the first thing that people see and the most important thing. I would suggest that sans serif, like the Calibri example that I've used, is the best when it comes to business, because it's very clean and clear when you print out business cards or when you write in your emails. Sans serif is the way to go. Any colors or pani choose garदाखेरि, make sure that your background is dark if the font is a little bit lighter, and vice versa. Next slide, Samir. So when it comes to color, it's important to realize that colors can trigger emotions as well. So it plays a lot with human psychology, which is why I've used Greta Thunberg here. I'm sure some of you might recognize her. A Swedish climate activist who she's taking a stand against climate change, and she's recognized for this yellow raincoat that she uses. In fact, it's been used by artists to represent her. And yellow is a sign of confidence and optimism, and that really makes her brand memorable, and it makes it stand out. Next slide. Similarly, when trying to find your brand colors, favorite color matra herera hundaina. You need to do some research and find a company that you admire or that's similar to what you envision your brand to be. Ani you color चाहिँ brandलाई suit गर्ने मात्र हैन, त्यो shade चाहिँ has to be used throughout. So I've suggested a website here called color.adobe.com, and there it gives you all the codes for the colors that you prefer, and you try to keep that shade consistent throughout. And just like fonts, I would not suggest using more than 2 colors, because धेरै रङ्गी भए पनि मान्छेहरू confuse हुन्छ. Unless your brand logo is a rainbow, then it's okay. But try to keep it consistent and try to stick to 2 colors. And I understand that there are some companies that you might admire, but it's very important not to copy other people. You need to be unique. You need to find your own colors, your own flavors. Next slide, please. So to put all of what I've said into an example, here Nicole Parsons, who resume her, she has picked out her colors, she has picked out her font, and you can really see how incorporating those makes her resume really stand out. And if you can imagine a very competitive job, hundreds of people apply, but if you can put maybe a nice chitika pareko photo, hopefully not a selfie, on the side, and your name in bold and the colors that represent your brand, it will really make a huge difference. Next slide, please. And lastma, about confidence. So मेरो personal life ma, I used to be एकदमै shy. मैले कुरा गर्नलाई अलि मेरो voice पनि अलि sound छ. So I used to be ignored quite a bit, especially by men. So as you know, men love to talk and they love to talk over us. I've had colleagues and male friends who would usually interrupt me, and this made me very angry and very frustrated because it was not only rude, but it made me feel as if I did not have a voice, which is not true. We all have a voice. So what I discovered is when I spoke up, when I was a little bit louder and more clear, it made people stop and listen, because if you have something important to say, people will always stop and listen. So that make that a part of your brand, make it who you are. Because if you have a very important message, your story, and you want the world to know, it's not going to help if you remain shy and closed up. So go out there and grab the world. Ani Bandana ma'am le bhaneko jastै, if you find that a colleague has in fact interrupted somebody, bring them back into the conversation and let them finish. Because people will remember how you made them feel, like I said earlier. Secondly, it's always important to know your brand. Sorry, can you go back once? I haven't finished it. It's always important to know that, know your brand inside and out. Otherwise, people will lose trust, and your story has no value. So in that 60-minute pitch, memorize it, tattoo it onto your brains, and like I said, be confident when you're telling the story. To my clients, I always say, if your brand was a person, how would you describe them? Like, what adjectives would you use? Now be that person wherever you represent this brand. Next slide. So finally, some key takeaways and questions to ask yourself in order to start branding. So number one, say, frame a narrative. Like Samir said, what is your message? What story are you telling? That's the first thing that you need to establish. Number two, identify your audience. How can I gain people's trust? Where will they see my message best? Number three is establish a visual identity. It's very important to have the colors, the images that will attract people and find you in a crowd of similar organizations or similar people like you. Number four is it's very important to be consistent. How will people recognize me? It's the voice that you have, the narrative that you use, And last nothing, be confident. How can I gain people's trust? You gain people's trust by speaking the same truths every single time and checking your facts and making sure that your voice is heard and it's loud and clear. Thank you. That's all we have for now. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Samir, Rana, and Luniva Shakir. So yes, we definitely have few questions from the audience. I'm just gonna read out to them, to you guys, so that you can address them. So the first question is by Mr. Lakshman. He has asked, if he's starting a new brand, how can he play a roadmap for himself to make a brand more focused and consistent?
So on the content side, that's a challenge at the beginning, but when you talk about your brand, whether it's personal or organizational, the challenge is that there's a lot that you can say, right? And a lot that you care about, a lot that the organization cares about. But Esma, it's like what Luniva was also saying, it's about identifying your main message. So Esma, it's really important to have a vision a mission, values, and goals. And based on that, you can make your brand a little bit more focused. Okay? So even for example, Sportify Nepalco Sidema, we're working in the space of sport for development and peace. But that's like the most broad thing ever, right? Sports development or peace that covers everything that I genuinely care about. The TESMA, for example, under development, right? We're focusing on education. Under education, we're focusing on the social sciences or on physics or on statistics. On the peace side, we're focusing on social cohesion, about peace building. So ISMA, it's about having a larger brand, and encompass in that brand has to be dumb specific things that if someone comes to you and asks, but they're not going to do this, that if someone comes to you and asks for your brand, whether it's personal or organizational, what are your three main priorities and how are you working towards those priorities? And two, you have to be able to say duck, duck, duck. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of thinking, but it's all about narrowing down from a broader set of values or kind of things that you care about into these few specific things that make you more focused. Luniba, do you have anything?
No, I think like you and I both said, it's very important to find the right story to tell, and in terms of your visual aspects. So what, like I said, which adjectives describe who you are, what your brand stands for. I think these are the ways to figure out which direction to go.
I think the host is stuck. Does someone else from Isaac Nepal want to hop in?
Okay.
Or go ahead.
Am I audible now?
Hey, okay, yes, I see you.
Yes, I'm sorry for the technical issue. So we have another question from Miss Prabina asking about how can we be more presentable in the professional space?
Should I take this, Samir?
Anyway, you can take this.
Okay. I think when it comes to presence, it's not really important if you have a nice shirt and a suit and tie. That's not really as important as being there and being confident in what you have to say. So like I said, people tend to forget what you look like, but as long as you make them feel good and inspire them or tell them something very different, they'll be able to remember you. So in terms of presence, I would say if you're meeting them in real life, when this virus sort of subsides, a good handshake is really important. Make sure that you're making good eye contact. Make sure you smell good. You are basically confident in your own skin. That's the most important thing.
Okay, so the next question we have is from Suluji, and she has asked, how can we, if we are a bit introvert, how can we be a bit more extrovert?
Okay, I'll take this one. So you may not be able to tell, but I'm probably the biggest introvert that I know. So Esma, it's not really a question about introversion and extroversion. Sometimes people associate being introverted with being shy and not confident, and extroverted with being ekdam confident. Okay? But introversion, what that means is introversion or extroversion, the difference is how you prefer to spend your time, who you prefer to spend that time with, and how you recover from potential social situations. Banana, for example. So for me, I get a lot of energy by spending time by myself, in my room, reading, about watching Netflix. Whereas for a lot of my extroverted friends, they get a lot of energy from other people, right? So Esma, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. It's just simply what your personality is like. So as an introvert, my goal isn't to suddenly become an extrovert overnight and, you know, force myself into situations, whether online or in real life, that I'm not comfortable with or I don't enjoy, right? So Esma, the most important thing is forgetting about the whole introversion extroversion thing and focusing on exactly what we talked about in terms of content and in terms of delivery and in terms of how we present ourselves. Okay, so Esma, personality does come into play here because most people do associate the loudest person in the room or the most talkative person in the room as being the most like professional, or as being the most, you know, people like as being the person that you should be listening to, but that's not true. I've been in a lot of situations where I've heard a lot of extroverts talking a lot but not saying much. I've also been in situations where people, they say stuff just to say something as opposed to when they have something to say, right? So Esma, like when you're in these situations, don't feel there's the pressure to, okay, like you know, I have to speak a lot and like I'm not talking, so like I should begin talking and just keep on talking like that. It's simply about when there's something that you care about that comes up, if you have something to say, then say it confidently. And it doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted. That only comes in, but after you say it or after you have conversations and you have to decide whether to go home and chill with your puppy and watch Netflix, or if you want to go to you know, another restaurant with your friends. So that's it. So don't worry too much about the whole introversion extroversion thing. That it's very oftentimes confused between shyness and confidence. Like this doesn't really matter that much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samir, for answering the question. The next question we have is from Manisha, and she has asked, if we are a student, how can we present ourselves, or how can we introduce ourselves?
Samir, I'll let you have this one.
Okay. Yeah. So this one, um, that's a good question, right? Like if someone asked me to do this when I was 17 or 18, like I would have no idea what branding meant, what like visual identity, all of this stuff meant. So Esma, it's pretty much the same format, right? So for example, I'm a student right now as well. So instead of saying, let's say the professional stuff, Sportified Nepal, effective altruism, Princeton, my all of those things, forgetting all of that, all you simply have to say is, like in my example, I'd say, hi, my name is Samir. I'm a Master of Public Administration student at Columbia University. I'm studying international development and peace building. I'm interested in working in South Asia, in the Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And right now I'm focusing on building my qualitative and quantitative skill sets. So this month, I didn't bring in any professional stuff. All you have to do is introduce yourself as the person you are. Okay, if you're a student, if you're in that context, then simply focus on that. You don't have to worry about needing to have the same introduction that I have, or like I don't have to worry about having the same introduction that Bandha ma'am has. All of that comes with time and comes with experience, but you know, just focus on who you are and where you are in your life right now, and know that that will change over time. And then once it changes, obviously you can start incorporating those other aspects of your identity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sami, for answering the question. Next question is by Mr. Lokesh, and he has asked for some suggestions to put genuine details to our profile in social media handles, but not the, and like how can you reflect on regarding this?
So I think it's very important to understand when you are establishing a brand, is it a service? Are you part of the service? Is it a brand? And do you have a website? See, these are the very integral things that you need to put out there. If you have a Facebook or Instagram, but it's linked to your personal life, like that's not very helpful if you're trying to sell a product. However, if your product has a page, has a website, has all of these things, then it's important to put that in the business card or in your email signatures, for example. So for Sportify, what I did was, as you can see on Samir's background, there's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think that's YouTube. So these are all things that, all platforms that Sportify sort of makes their link to the rest of the world. However, if you find that you aren't really connecting with the audience through these platforms, then you don't necessarily need to put that in your business card or anywhere where your audience is viewing you.
And Isma, I'll just add one quick thing. So there's obviously, organizational social media, but I'm a personal social media also. Like, I took that opportunity to shamelessly plug all my social media accounts and Spotify also. So Isma, actually one of Luniva's slides is helpful, okay? It makes sense to brand yourself a little differently on different social media platforms, right? On Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, it can be a little more text heavy, whereas Instagram, it's all about like pictures and captions important, but everyone kind of looks at the picture and decides whether or not they want to continue reading. So it depends on your personal strategy. Miro, I actually don't follow that at all, which I think I should. Miro, like if you check out my social media platforms, on all my platforms, I put the same exact thing on all of my platforms because Mirror brand is that I'm very public, I'm very open, and I want to say the same exact story on each platform. But that's not the most effective. For example, when like on Twitter, I'm posting a lot of pictures with a lot of text, or on Instagram, I have like, stories, I have like a lot of text as opposed to pictures, but it's simply a choice that I made for my brand that makes sense for my brand, but it may not make sense for yours. So Esma, it's all about coming up with a general strategy for how you want to present yourself online, deciding how closely you want that online identity and brand to match your personal identity and brand, and also realizing that you have to adapt along the way. Okay? Like, I had a specific social media strategy, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and now it looks different because of, I've seen how to move forward with digital engagement, or I've seen how people have responded or not responded on different platforms. So I tweak my strategy a little so that my brand can become stronger on the personal side and on the organizational side as well. So it's all about strategy, it's all about planning, but it's also all about adaptation and refining how you want to present yourself in these, especially these online platforms.
Thank you so much for answering the question. We have one more question, and it says like, what can I do to practice personal and professional branding if I'm starting from scratch?
I think we answered that in our slides. I believe Isaac might be sending out an overview of what we talked about, so you can go over that.
Yeah, and Isma, like one thing is that this isn't easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it well, right? So for example, my first session with Luniva for Sportify and for myself, she asked me questions like, what is your font? What is your color scheme? What is your, what are your adjectives? And I was just thinking, I had never thought of that before. Okay, I was like, yo, my font is Times New Roman, colors is like, I don't know, black and white, I guess. But then as you can see, it's a constant process of learning and growing. Okay, so for example, if she asked me the same question right now, I think my font would actually still be Times New Roman. On the personal side, Sportify side, it's a Calibri font. Mirror color scheme is red, white, and blue because that's Nepalco flag, but also the US flag. I've lived in both countries for half my life. Mirror visual identity ko lagi, I always make sure to wear one Nepali component and one sports component. To date, I was able to combine that by just wearing Nepal NFL football team with jersey. So I was glad that Bandhan and ma'am talked about that. So, you know, all of this stuff I taught for the first time like 2 months ago, and that was because of Luniva. So Esma, I would suggest, you know, just looking at the one pager, looking at your notes today and thinking to yourself, okay, what are the colors that I associate myself with, or I want my brand to be associated with? What are 3 adjectives that I want people to think about when they see me or when they think about me? What are 3 themes that I want to associate with myself? Like Malay did sports, peace and development, like I said. And also what brands do you link yourself with, right? Mere introduction, ma, like even when I speak, the brands I associate myself with are obviously of Sportify, Effective Altruism, Columbia, the organizations that I've worked with. So that's important to consider when you're starting by yourself. Okay, like, you know, I'm Sportify isn't some like Nike, and I'm not some, you know, Bill Gates or something where that in itself is the brand. Okay, so Esma, it's important to associate yourself with brands that are important to you, that are part of your life. So even like all the ISECers in this room, right? ISEC is an extremely, extremely strong brand, both globally and nationally. So in your introduction, when you say, hi, my name is this, and I am this at ISEC, people will automatically associate you with ISECO brand. And because ISECO brand is strong, then your brand strengthens, right? So, you know, it's just all about practice. I mean, knowing that, you know, this takes a lot of time and a lot of thought and a lot of making mistakes, but learning from those mistakes so that you can move forward very strongly.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Samir and Ms. Luniva, for a wonderful session. For me personally, the most highlighting part of the entire session was choosing the colors. कसरी चाहिँ हामीले हाम्रो brand चिनाउनलाई color with the human psychology, representing the emotions, we can choose the color. So that was my biggest learning from the entire session, I would say. And I hope हाम्रो audienceहरूलाई पनि सबै टिपहरू चाहिँ टिप्नु भएको छ आफ्नो डायरीमा. And कुनै पनि कुरा छुटेको छ भने चाहिँ हामीले हाम्रो आउटपुटमा we are definitely gonna share it with you all. So thank you so much, Mr. Samir and Ms. Luniva, for this wonderful session.